floating Friar of Lover's Lane. The rain began without warning. One moment, the sky above the University of Santo Tomas was the color of old bone, pale, still, threatening, and the next it cracked open like something rotten giving way. Not the gentle Manila drizzle you could ignore. This was the kind of rain that felt angry, the kind that made you feel like the sky itself wanted you off the street. I had stayed too long after our math class. Professor Reyes had kept us past 5, scribbling differential equations on the board until the chalk dust hung in the air like smoke. By the time I stuffed my notebooks into my battered leather bag, most of my blockmates were already gone. The hallways of the main building emptied fast when it rained, everyone rushing, shoes squeaking on the old stone floors that have been walked on since 1927. Bahala na, I told myself. I'll just cut through Lover's Lane. Lover's Lane. I don't know why they call it that. There's nothing romantic about it. A narrow, tree-lined path that cuts between the old buildings, flanked by acacia trees so ancient their roots have cracked the concrete walkway into jagged, uneven slabs. The trees are enormous. Their canopies tangle overhead and block out most of the sky. Even on sunny days, Lover's Lane feels like it exists in its own separate light, filtered, greenish, underwater. At 5:30 in the afternoon, in the middle of a monsoon downpour, it felt like the entrance to somewhere you shouldn't go. I went anyway. The moment I stepped under the canopy of trees, the sound changed. The rain became muffled, a low, constant hiss from above, rather than the hammering I'd been walking through. My sneakers found the uneven stones beneath the puddles. I pulled my bag tighter against my back and walked fast, head down. That's when I felt it. Not heard. Felt. A drop in temperature so sudden and so sharp it made me gasp, like stepping into a refrigerated room. The hairs on my arms stood up all at once. I stopped walking. Kayang-kaya mo ito, I told myself. Wala kang pinapaniwala ang multo. You can do this, I told myself. You don't believe in ghosts. I didn't believe in ghosts. I was a second-year psychology student. I knew about pareidolia, about how the human brain finds faces and figures in random shapes. I knew about infrasound making people feel like they were being watched. I had explanations for everything. I started walking again. The path curved ahead of me. Through the curtain of rain, I could see the far end of Lover's Lane, the archway, the street, the gate, safety, maybe 60 meters away. And between me and that archway, there was a figure. I stopped. Even from that distance, something was wrong. Not wrong in any way I could name immediately. Just wrong the way a word looks wrong when you've stared at it too long. The figure was standing completely still, not sheltering under a tree, not walking, not hunched against the rain the way every living person hunches in a downpour. Just standing, upright, still as a photograph. Pari, I realized, a priest. I could make out the white habit, long, cream-colored, belted at the waist. A Dominican. UST was a Dominican university. It wouldn't be strange to see a friar on campus. Except no one stands like that in the rain. No one stands that still. I kept walking. What else could I do? There was no other way out. I kept my eyes down, fixed on the broken stones, counting my steps. Sampung hakbang. Sham. Wala. 10 steps. 9. 8. Good afternoon, Father, I called out when I was close enough. My voice came out smaller than I intended, swallowed by the rain. Wala po kayong payong? Malakas po ang ulan ngayon. Don't you have an umbrella? The rain is really heavy today. Nothing. Not even a turn of the head. I was almost level with him now. I glanced up. He was old. Or at least, he looked old. The face beneath the hood of his habit was deeply lined, the skin the color of old candle wax. His eyes were closed. His hands were folded in front of him, fingers laced together, and his lips were moving. Praying, maybe. Whispering something I couldn't hear over the rain. I breathed out slowly. Okay, Lang. Just a friar, praying in the rain. Priests do strange things sometimes. I had no business judging. I passed him. 3 steps past him, I noticed his habit. It wasn't just old. It was wrong. The style, the cut, the weave of the fabric, it didn't look like any religious clothing I'd seen on the campus priests. It looked like something from a museum, something from a painting. The kind of habit you see in the old portraits hanging in the corridors of the main building, the ones painted in the 1700s, the ones where the friars look stern and unhappy and long dead. I slowed. I should not have slowed, but I did, and I turned around. He was 10 feet behind me, still facing the direction I'd come from, which meant his back was to me. But he was no longer in the spot where I'd passed him. He had moved, silently, without the sound of footsteps on wet stone, and now he was 10 feet behind me. I opened my mouth to say something. Father? Maybe. Or maybe just a sound, some frightened syllable my brain couldn't form into a word. Then I saw his feet. Or rather, I saw that he didn't have any. Not exactly. His habit hung down to where his feet should have been, but beneath the hem, there was nothing touching the ground. A gap. Small. Maybe 4 inches, maybe 5. He was floating. Lumulutang siya. The world went very quiet around me. Quieter than the rain should have allowed. I could hear my own heartbeat. Loud, offbeat, panicked. And I could hear the faint sound of the thing that was not a priest still whispering, still praying, in a language I didn't recognize and couldn't place. Then he turned. Slowly. The way a door swings shut on its own. His eyes were open now. They were not the eyes of something that had ever been alive. I ran. I have never run like that before in my life. I dropped all pretense of dignity. I didn't watch where I was putting my feet. I slipped on a wet stone, and my knee hit the ground, and I didn't feel it. Didn't even register the pain until much later. I scrambled up and kept going. My bag swung wildly. Rain hammered my face. I couldn't hear my own screaming over the sound of the downpour, but I think I was screaming. The archway, the gate, the street. I burst through into the noise and light of España Boulevard and nearly collided with an old manong selling cigarettes from a plastic cart. He grabbed my arm to steady me. Ooh, bata, ingat ka naman. Hey, kid, be careful, he snapped. Then he looked at my face and his expression changed. Hoy, okay ka ba? Namumutla ka? Hey, are you okay? You're turning pale. I couldn't answer him. I turned around. From where I stood at the gate, I could see the full length of Lover's Lane, straight and dark under its canopy of ancient trees. The rain was still falling. The path was empty. But at the far end, at the curve where I had passed him, something pale stood motionless in the gray afternoon, watching, too far away to see clearly, too still to be anything living. The menong followed my gaze. Huwag mo nang pansinin. Just ignore it, he said quietly. His voice had changed. He wasn't annoyed anymore. He sounded careful, practiced, like he'd said this exact thing before to other frightened students. Lumakad ka na. Huwag kang lumingon. Walk away now, don't look back. Don't look back. I walked to the jeepney stop. I did not look back. 3 days later, I went to the UST archives. I don't know exactly why. Maybe because I'm a psychology student and I needed to explain it. Needed to put a frame around it, give it a name, make it something I could file away and forget. I asked the archivist about the history of Lover's Lane, about the old friars. She looked at me over her glasses for a long moment. May nakita ka ba? She asked. Did you see something? I didn't answer. She pulled out a thin folder. Inside was a reproduction of an old photograph, black and white, dated 1912. A group of Dominican friars standing in front of the old building. And there, at the edge of the group, half turned as if aware of the camera but refusing to fully face it, was a man whose face I recognized with a cold certainty I will never be able to explain. The deep lines, the folded hands, the white habit with its strange, antique cut. Siya, the archivist said softly. Him. She tapped the photograph. There have been reports for over 100 years. Students, faculty, security guards, always in the rain, always near the old acacia trees. She closed the folder. They say he's still doing his rounds. Hindi pa tapos ang misyon niya. His mission isn't finished yet. She handed me a small pamphlet, a campus safety guide, the kind they give incoming freshmen. Buried on the 3rd page, between reminders about locking bicycles and avoiding dark parking areas at night, was a single line I had never noticed before. Avoid walking alone through Lover's Lane after 5 p.m., especially during inclement weather. I asked her why that was in there. She smiled, a small, careful smile, and said nothing. My blockmates still tell ghost stories during our free period between classes. Before, I used to scroll through my phone while they talked, half listening, mildly entertained. Now, I put my phone down. Now, I listen. And sometimes, when someone describes a figure standing too still in the rain, or a sudden cold that has no source, or the faint sound of Latin whispered from somewhere that shouldn't have anyone in it, I watch their faces carefully. Because there is a specific look that people get when what they're describing is real. When they're not performing, not embellishing, not trying to frighten anyone. When they saw something that they still can't explain and are not sure they want to. I know that look now. I see it every morning in the mirror. Stay safe, and don't walk alone through Lover's Lane when it rains.